Hey everybody, welcome to Maryanne Live. I'm Maryanne Comaroto. I'm so glad you are with us today. And we're streaming live. If you're listening and you're thinking, wonder what this looks like on television. Well, we're streaming live on Maryanne Live. Check it out, MaryanneLive.com. You just click on the Listen Now, Watch Now. It'll take you right to the streaming event. Oh yes, we are so excited to deliver to you, to all of your senses, putting only good things in your mind. It's one of our 7 essential truths here that I live by. But before we get to that, for those of you who are new, welcome. For those of you who are coming back again and again, you're waiting, I know, for the audible breath, and you're waiting for me to say what I always say, which is great relationships begin within. Coming inside to the internal, to that world that so often, as Rick will tell us, our guest who's joining us, Rick Hanson, he's written an amazing, a new book, yet another book, as though he has so much extra time as a neuropsychologist over at UC Berkeley. He's written a new book, Hardwiring Happiness. We're going to be talking about that this hour. But on that note, let me back up and say that the great relationships begin within part. It's really important to do the work that we need to do. I know that this is not a happy thought for some people, but we're going to turn that around this hour. Doing that kind of inner work can be playful, and we are going to work on hardwiring our brains for happiness right here this hour. We're so excited. To help you do that, we're going to take an audible breath, because that's what I invite everybody to do at the beginning of the program. A, it's free. B, it feels so good. Did I say free? I did. I'm kidding. It's free. What's free anymore? Your breath, right? Your breath. It's free. Oxygenating, listening to the sound of yourself. Just try it. It takes literally a moment to bring your attention to your breath. Now, not for everybody all the time does this feel good, but ultimately, with some practice, intentional breath is important, because you might be in the middle of something right now that is anxiety-provoking. We're going to talk about that today. These are not catch-alls. Catch-all for every situation, but for the most part, taking an audible breath is some really delicious medicine. Go ahead and give yourself a gift of your own sound and your breath. Drop your earlobes from your shoulders or the other way around, whichever is real for you, and just take that moment while we set up for the next invitation. I know Rick is so excited that I'm telling you to do this, because this is part of what we're going to do to rewire our brain. These little moments, these instances where we can turn our attention to something positive for good, because neurons that fire together, wire together. We're going to talk about that this hour as well. So how about we do this next? Let's go down our list of folks who make it possible for you to do what you do, your gratitude list. Sadly, in some ways, gratitude has become a cliche. Actually, that's probably a good thing. If it's become a cliche, it means that people are talking about it everywhere. But let's give that a little shaky shake on an Etch-a-Sketch, right? Wherever you're at today, just give yourself a little shake, and let's make a list of gratitude. Who made it possible for you to do what you're doing right now or not doing? What are you sitting on? Do you have a headset on? Right? Are you teaching? Are you listening? What are you wearing? Are you on your phone? How are you watching this program? Thousands upon thousands and hundreds of people all over the world probably were involved in you doing what you're doing right now. And if that doesn't make you feel kind of good, I don't know what does. My gratitude list is longer than this program could possibly touch. But for now, know this: the National Action Organization, helping us change the way our culture values each other, makes this program possible. The Open Secret Bookstore in San Rafael, California, along with the Avon Breast Cancer Foundation.org. We also want you to know that you can find out how to get on our newsletter. I know you're like, well, why do I just want to click here? Go to MaryanneLive.com and sign up for our newsletter, which gives you all of this information on a regular basis, so you can stay tuned in to what we're doing, who's on deck. For example, like today, Rick Hanson is back in the house. He's written a book. You can see him here streaming live, so get on your computer thing so gratefully and full of breath, because here we go. We're going to talk about this ground groundbreaking science that everybody all over the place is talking about, neurobiology, the brain, neuropsychology. Everyone's fascinated with what's happening between our ears in a new way, and definitely a new way. And you can see I've got a brain up on the screen here. This guy's brain is all lit up. I was going to put this one. Well, I'll go ahead and do it. I was going to put this brain that's in a jar. Can you see that? Yeah. This is kind of gross, but Rick is we're going to ask Rick about it. What is that thing? It looks like just a bunch of gray matter. It actually looks like yellow matter here, but with these things all have a function, the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe, etc. We're going to talk a little bit about brain anatomy. Don't worry, this is going to relate to you and feeling better for sure. His new book, as a matter of fact, is taking all this good research and really distilling it in a way so you can access feeling happier. Please do not shut that door. It is so hot in the studio. I'm saying that, so I'm just jumping on my my feeling matter brain here. It is hot in this studio, but I'm happy about that, Rick. I know Rick is ready to pass out over there. Okay, where was I? The thing is, I was talking about the book, right? Hardwiring Happiness, the New Brain Science of Contentment, Calm, and Confidence, is a distillation of not only Rick's, but the many years that he's been working on distilling this information for us, but how we can actually access a happier existence, a more peaceful existence. Before we get to that, Rick, and I'm going to introduce you in just a second, I pulled up some statistics that I thought were interesting. The average weight of a human brain is 3 pounds. That doesn't seem that heavy, although I think Secretariat, the horse, had a heart that was 23 pounds, which has nothing to do with the brain. But, you know, these are sort of ambiguous ideas, but 3 pounds, that's kind of a lot. You know, it's a weighty deal. Well, the average weight of the human brain at birth is 12 ounces. So we're going to talk a little bit about how does it grow, how has our brain evolved, and the percent of the body's glucose burned up by the brain is 70%. I want to ask Rick about that as well. What does the brain feed on? I don't think it's Big Macs and Diet Coke, but, I mean, if that's what you're putting in your brain, I want to know, how does that affect our feeling happy? Okay, without further ado, neuropsychologist Rick Hanson is joining us here today. We're so glad to have you with us, Rick. Welcome back to the program.
Maryanne, it's great, and just listening to you, it's, you know, kind of like effervescent, just lifting me along, bubbling away.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm happy. I'm happy to be effervescing with you, Rick. We know you've been traveling around working so hard, and this new book, your baby, recently came out, and you got to be proud because it's just so filled with so many rich pointers for all of us who are trying to get happy, aren't we? We're almost desperately trying to get happy. What inspired you to write this one?
Kind of a deep sense about happiness, broadly, and really thinking about how to grow the good stuff inside ourselves. In other words, if you want to be happier, or if you want to feel more loved, or you want to feel more loving, or more confident, or more self-accepting, or just more comfortable with your own body, or anything it is you want to grow inside yourself. Maybe you want to get more skillful with your children or a relationship. How do you actually do that? So I think that in a way in self-help, psychology, positive psychology, New Age, whatever, we've gotten really fascinated with different states of mind, but we haven't really focused on how to turn those momentary states into something of lasting value inside.
Right.
In other words, the real essence of learning. So what my book's about, in a nutshell, Hardwiring Happiness, is turning everyday experiences into lasting resources inside of all kinds, including like you were talking about a moment ago, gratitude, or that feeling of relaxing that people were getting when they did that really nice audible breath, or just kind of delight in the flow of your own stream of consciousness, which is pretty remarkable. You know, life is often difficult, and we also have a brain that's biased toward the negative. It's really good at learning from the bad, and relatively bad at learning from the good. It's like Velcro for the bad, but Teflon for the good. Even though learning from the good is the primary way to grow the good stuff inside. So what my book's a lot about is beating the negativity bias, popping open that bottleneck, and using everyday experiences, not wasting them, to get that good stuff inside for yourself and everybody else around you.
Beautiful. Let's talk a little bit about that negativity bias. Last time we had you on, we were talking about growing, attending to the garden of the mind.
Yeah.
You know, and I love that idea, and it's a relatively new concept for folks because we have felt like we're at the effective life, and we're externally referenced as social animals. So, you know, this is an interesting idea. So explain what negativity bias is. It's been flopping around for about a decade, this idea that the brain is hardwired for survival and negative experiences. But let's revisit that real quick.
Sure. Well, basic idea is that, first of all, your experiences, what you think, what you feel, what you hope, what you dream, joys and sorrows, constantly changing the structure of the brain in ways that scientists are now actually able to measure. And along the way, the brain is very vulnerable to learning from negative experiences because that's what kept our ancestors alive under harsh conditions. Rule one in the wild is, eat lunch today, don't be lunch today. So our ancestors had to really get good at learning from negative experiences because if they survived one, if they survived being attacked by a predator, say, or some kind of aggression inside their band or between bands, if they lived through the experience, right, they better learn from it. Once burned, twice shot. Never forget. Meanwhile, we're having, lots of typically mild, positive experiences. You get something done. You put on a nice sweater. It feels good. You listen to someone. It's fun. You have your latte. It tastes good. Great. But they just pass right through the brain like water through a sieve, while negative experiences are caught over time. So, what hardwiring happiness is about is taking charge of that structure-building process from the inside out. It's kind of the essence of self-reliance, which is so important, as you know, when so many people are pushed around these days, powerful forces and the reactions to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the good news is that while this structure exists, the triune brain theory that people talk about, right? The brain stem. I'm just learning about some of this, or relearning about some of it. We have three parts of the brain. I had a picture up a little bit earlier. The brain stem, the mammalian social brain, and then our frontal cortex, right? The higher, finer kind of ways that we process information. In case people didn't know that, I think it's pretty fascinating. Well, some of it, and a lot of people do, people are finding this information fascinating. What part of my brain is doing what kind of thinking? Well, the part that you were talking about, this hardwiring, happens down in the brain stem, largely, not only, right? And then that mammalian brain connection gets involved. But the good news is, we're going to talk about this neuroplasticity, the process where we can override or interrupt this process, would you call it, to get more grounded in the positive experiences. Because I like kind of the anatomy of what you're talking about. I think it gives people a greater sense of control, especially control freaks like myself. You like to think that oh, this is what's happening in my brain, so you don't feel like that, there's this vast area that we have no control over. So let's talk about neuroplasticity in terms of getting up to that frontal cortex part of the brain where the more fine experiences are processed. And I might not have explained that well, but if you want to redo it, go ahead.
Right. As you said early on, the famous saying now, more and more well known, is neurons that fire together wire together.
Right.
Okay. That's the fancy way of putting it is experience-dependent neuroplasticity. In other words, brain is plastic. It's changeable based on our experiences. Now, those changes happen throughout the nervous system. The brain is designed to learn. That's all that learning is. It's change of structure and function. But without change of structure and function, no learning, right? So the key kind of like pathway for that runs through a part of the brain, you've heard of it, called the hippocampus.
Yep.
Technically, we have two of them, one on each side of the brain. These are in that ancient subcortical, under the cortex, or sometimes called limbic system parts of the brain. And the hippocampus is next door to the amygdala, a part of the brain that's kind of like an alarm bell. And in an average person, typical person, about 2/3 of the cells in the amygdala are scanning for bad news. That's a really good example of the negativity bias of the brain.
Right.
So here you are, you're having experiences, right? You're realizing something that's more skillful, let's say, with your partner. Or maybe you have a spiritual insight, or maybe you have a moment of gratitude, or you feel loved, right? or you just feel cozy and relaxed. Right then and there's basically a global state in your brain as a whole that does involve the cortex as well as other parts of the brain, such as experiences of reward, coming from the brain stem with dopamine, or flows of natural opioids, pleasure molecules like the endorphins that come from the hypothalamus, also in the subcortical.
Subcortical, okay.
You're having that experience.
Right.
Now what? Does it just kind of wash through your mind? Or do you stay with it? Do you savor it? Do you have the humility of receptivity? Do you come into an intimacy with your own body? Do you actually feel it? And do you stay with it for 5, 10, 20 seconds in a row? Do you protect it? Or do you jump onto the next thing? Or perhaps does this positive experience get overwhelmed by all those negative voices inside your head? So if you think about it, one thing I love about talking with you is you're such a clear model for, an advocate for, the fundamental importance of getting on your own side, being a friend to yourself, There's a joke, I'm a psychotherapist, there's a joke in therapy world. How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one. But the light bulb has to want to change, right? So to be the light bulb who wants to change, which is really important. What we're talking about here is getting on your own side from the inside out, treating yourself like you matter, and holding on to, not leaving all this money on the table of ordinary experiences, holding on to these precious, good, everyday experiences to grow lasting value inside yourself.
Right. So this is beautiful, beautiful context. If some of you are just joining us now, you're so busy trying to get here, go ahead and breathe. It's okay. We'll wait for you. And your gratitude list can wait because we're talking with Rick Hanson right now. Hardwiring Happiness is the name of his new book. It's a beautiful cover. And we're talking about the new brain science of contentment, calm, and confidence, and how to really work with, as an advocate for your own neuroplasticity, self-modulating your neuroplasticity process, and how that can benefit you in creating lasting happiness versus what you were just saying, Rick, these sort of fleeting experiences that we don't know that we can tend to, or take whatever experience arises and attend to it in a new kind of way. And it takes discipline, at least, and devotion, I think, for sure, but also I love what you were saying, being an advocate for your own growth, for really, knowing that we can do something about it. Because look for a long time, Rick, folks thought that this process was more static, right? The brain, you just were born the way you were with a certain temperament, and that's just the way it is. Like people would say, that's just the way I am, and what we know is that's not true. And part of that might be true in terms of temperament or character or what happened in your early childhood, but the good news, and I love this about your work, is you really do remind us that we can actually actively work with whatever information our brain is telling us, whatever comes forward, and transition that into something that gives us more happiness and more of what we want. And we're going to talk about how to do that this hour with Rick. Rick, you're going to go through the process, the HEAL process. And then there's a 21-day program that we can all get excited about that we're going to talk about towards the end of the program. But so far we've covered my very poor understanding of brain anatomy, which I showed a couple of pictures, and neuroplasticity, the idea that our environment, what we experience, the brain is always changing, but how we interact with our environment can lead to positive changes, that we're not bound to negative thinking, even though that's part of the old brain and the way we're wired. We can override that. Now let's talk from here about something that I think people are challenged by before we get to HEAL, because I think this is, let's live in this solution, Rick. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening on the planet right now. I'm very interested in here's what's happening for me and my mind, and my mind's firing. And then there's this experience of feeling like life is coming at you, life is happening to you, right, versus through you. I'm hearing a lot about people feeling like, God, I'm doing all this great work on myself, but the general feeling in the world or in the air, I can't turn that off so much. It feels like that. I'm not sure it's true, but let's speak to that, this inundation of negativity, this fear, the kind of the climate of mania or I don't know, just there's not a lot of calm that people are experiencing, and I don't want to say that that's about a point of view necessarily, although Buddha might say it is, you know, you see suffering or not, but I think there's something very real about it. Would you address that now for folks before we move on to heal?
Deep.
It is. I'm a deep girl, I'm sorry. Too much, but well, let's take the surface of the deep and go there first.
No, I like deep.
Okay.
Deep is good.
Okay.
Okay, so first, there's reality. There really is. Okay, it's the way it is. And I think of it as like a mosaic. Okay, mosaic has a lot of tiles. Let's call them, you know, positive, negative, and neutral, or we could say beneficial, harmful, and neutral. Okay. So I think it's really important, just to kind of sum it up here, to see the whole picture. I don't believe in positive thinking. I believe in realistic thinking. The problem is we have a bias in the brain that's constantly scanning for bad news and missing the good news.
Okay.
And if you focus more on the good news, actually that helps you deal more successfully with the bad news. You need to grow these muscles inside yourself.
Beautiful. On that note, we're going to go to break and come back. That was well said. Wow, that was really simple, actually. And we're going to go to break. We'll be back with Rick Hanson, more on hardwiring happiness. Doesn't matter what's happening in the world, yet it does, right? The paradox. But it's about how we want to look at what's happening and what we're making it mean, and reworking that brain. We're going to do it here, together. Making your brain work on Maryanne Live. Back in just a minute. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay. And for those of you who are with us streaming live, Rick Hanson is here in the house. Rick, you've been traveling a lot. I want to ask you a personal question behind the scenes. Something that I wanted to ask you right away, and I love in your first chapter you talk about this. You use the thing that you teach. You know, this doesn't always happen. I mean, I know that sounds strange, but give us a little story about, you were in college and you stumbled across this idea, right? Tell us a little bit about this, because you lived for this work. And,
yeah, totally. Well, we all deal with issues that were both in childhood and adulthood, and in my own case, growing up, I ended up having lots of little, but they added up over time. Little and not so little sometimes. Experiences of being rejected, left out, mainly because I was very young going through school and a typical dorky, shy kid. So I felt, like I was looking at the other kids through a wall of glass. So I landed in college and I discovered something that was amazing then and still seems amazing to me now, which is if I notice good facts, second, let myself have a good experience, not just notice them. And third, especially, let the experience sink in of feeling cared about, included, and valued. It gradually felt like I was truly filling the hole in my heart.
Wow.
And now, 30 years later, I understand that I was using experience-dependent neuroplasticity
right,
to
exactly.
internalize these useful experiences to grow resources inside myself.
Yeah, that's
I think you're right. So many people feel like they're running on empty.
Yeah.
Because kind of they are.
Yeah.
And what you and I are talking about, it's how to get some gas in your tank.
That's right. We're going to go back on streaming. We're streaming live here on Maryanne Live, and we're going to go back to the airwaves. And thanks for joining us for that behind-the-scene moment. Okay, Jay, I think we're ready to roll.
All right. Let's return. This will be the first of 3 8-minute segments in 5, 4, 3.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like my brain is just going in different directions. It's like you have a thought, and then there's a thought about that thought, and then I wonder who thought that thought, and where did that come, It's a symphony of an SHI storm going on in there. And, and I know I'm not alone. And before the break, we were talking, Rick Hanson's in the house. He's written a book, Hardwiring Happiness. We were talking about, the state of the world, what's going on in reality, the greater reality than our little universe. It's real. What's happening? It's intense. And Rick, you really brought it down into a nice context for us. It's how we learn to meet that experience. It's not even important necessarily what you've done up until this moment. What you need to know is that we can actually be in a different kind of relationship with what our minds are telling us. And that's the beauty of this work that you're doing. We can actually, through neuroplasticity, through active discipline or devotion, to your program that we're going to talk about now, Heal, the Heal program, how to have a positive experience, enrich it, absorb it, and then link the material, the positive and negative material, so how you call it, soothes you, and eventually replaces those negative experiences to some degree. So not to worry, life is going to keep coming. Things are going to keep happening, but we're going to talk specifically about how to deal with some of those events, but in general, in the big meta container of Heal. So let's talk about each of these steps, Rick. Let's start with the Heal is an acronym, by the way. Heal. Let's start with H, having a positive experience. Behind the scenes, you mentioned how you stumbled across this, but for folks who are just joining us now, let's talk a little bit about this.
Yeah. If you want to grow good things inside yourself, and to make it really concrete, if you want to feel more loved, if you want to feel more worthy, more confident, if you want to deepen your spiritual insights, if you want to deepen your commitment to exercise or sobriety or not eating that whole bag of chocolate chip cookies more than once a year, right? If you want to grow those things inside yourself, those inner resources, inner strengths I call them, are woven out of brain structure. Where that comes from is having experiences with them in the first place. To use a certain terminology, inner strengths, the good stuff we want to grow inside, are traits. Traits come from states, mental states, which means emotions, body sensations, thoughts, and so forth, that are turned into traits. Okay? So the first step, you need to have that useful experience. Most of the time, you just notice you're already having it. Something nice has happened, you're feeling comfortable, you're listening to Maryanne, it's interesting. You got something done, you finally got the kids to bed, your boss gave you a compliment, something has happened, you're having an experience. But it's okay to also create a positive experience, like doing a compassion practice, or calling up something that you feel grateful for, or bringing up the body memories, I do often, of rock climbing, when I'm dealing with something where I've got to be assertive and strong, that kind of body. Okay, you got to go. That's the first step. Now you got the state. But if you want to turn it into anything of lasting value, if you want to learn from this experience, if you want to keep the value inside yourself, you've got to install that state as a trait. And that's where the second and third steps of the HEAL acronym come in. The second being enriching, where you help the experience last, you protect it, try to open to it in your body, bring it out of your head, down into your body. That's enriching. It's a very natural thing to do. These are enjoyable experiences. It's sweet to open to them. Tell yourself that you deserve it. You matter. Be that light bulb who wants to change. Be on your own side. And then you can also turbocharge the installation process, the converting of this experience into lasting neural structure by absorbing it. A for absorbing it. So you have a sense that it's coming in. Those are the three basic steps. It's a little bit like a fire. You light the fire, then you add fuel to it in the enriching step, and then you absorb the nice warmth of the fire. Okay, the optional step, if you want, is to link, as you said, positive material with some negative material. But the positive is a natural antidote for. So, for example, feeling cared about today, loved and appreciated today, is a natural antidote to old feelings of being dismissed, rejected, bullied in junior high school, left out when you grew up in your family, what have you. Since neurons that fire together wire together, if you're aware of both of these at the same time, positive and negative, the positive gradually soothes the negative. This is actually a very natural thing. If you're upset about something and you talk with a friend, you're doing linking on your own right there. You're feeling bad, but you're also aware of your friend's caring and kindness. So you put the two together. So that gives us the acronym HEAL, H-E-A-L. Sounds very complex. Bottom line is, have it, enjoy it. Forward. Have it, so it's activated as a state, and then enjoy it, install it as a trait. Or to really simplify it to wrap up, mo better. In other words, more episodes in a day, half a dozen at least, hopefully, where you really let something good land inside you and gradually take root in your heart. And then inside individual episodes, mo better. More engagement with these experiences to really help them sink into you. That's how you steepen your learning curve through life. It's kind of like, what's your average growth curve, or growth rate, rather, from your daily experiences? Is it flat, or is it steep at all? It's like, what's your interest rate, money in the bank? Wouldn't you want a bigger interest rate? Any given day, it wouldn't make that much difference. But if you add the difference between 5% and 4%, or 2%
Yeah.
or 1%, it makes a huge difference over the course of a year or a lifetime. Same with your personal growth rate from your everyday experiences.
Well, thank you for that, Rick. It's a great understanding for how this process works, and for those of you who are just joining us, Hardwiring Happiness is Rick's new book. Get a copy, and Rick takes you through the process in more detail. We're going to review some more specific challenges we might have along the way, and then the 21-day process in a little bit. So not to worry if you don't absorb it all here. You get the general idea that when something arises in your mind that feels good, or you intentionally put your focus on it, you can actually get into a relationship with this material and deepen it, and it expands your overall sense of happiness. Okay, so
1 minute.
when we come back, I'm going to be, I don't like the term devil's advocate, but I'm kind of going to do that because I've got a couple of questions to ask you about this. We're going to go to break right now. For those of you who are streaming live, you'll see us behind the scenes in just a minute. Everybody else sit tight. We'll be back right after these messages. Rick Hanson, Hardwiring Happiness is what we're talking about right here on MaryanneLive. Back in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Rick. I'm going to, thank you, Jay. I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about the idea that, you know, the mind has hundreds of thousands of thoughts per day. And just the sheer volume I'd like you to speak to. What's the difference between a conscious relationship with the material that arises and then those unconscious thoughts? Because here's what I know people have said, you know, the idea of positive thinking is like, oh my God, I can't constantly be in relationship with what I'm thinking. I'm busy doing stuff. You know, do some thoughts have more gravity and weight than others? And this might seem like splitting hairs, but I know there's a lot of people who wonder about this kind of thing. Do you know, can one great positive experience counterbalance another? And, you know, so do you mind if we go down this road a little bit?
No, it's great. I think it's great. It's great to surface questions or even objections because that's what, you know, sincere people do. So
Yeah.
It's really appropriate.
Well, right, because you want them to actually get the material. Okay, I'm ready, Jay, when we're ready to go back.
Okay, let's return our second of 3 8-minute segments, and we're back in 5, 4, 3.
Welcome back, everybody. Are you interested in hardwiring happiness? It is possible, says Rick Hanson, our guest today. He's joining us again from his crazy tour around the Western world, flying everywhere. You're such a popular neuropsychologist. By the way, if I didn't mention that already, you're out at UC Berkeley doing, among other things, a psychotherapist, and you've pretty much devoted your life to helping us understand how the inner workings of the mind, how we can be in relationship to that and create more happiness in our lives. And you're not talking about positive thinking, this very popular way, this notion that we can just think a few positive thoughts and we'll be better off at the end of the day if we just repeat that process. This is a distinctly different interaction with the material that comes forward in your mind, right?
Yeah, you know, I was just reflecting that if these people naturally understand the idea of, you know, get more good stuff in the bank, get more good stuff in the refrigerator, etc. Get more good stuff in your closet. They get that. They even get the idea of, you know, grow the good stuff in your body, build some muscle, get leaner. But grow good stuff in your mind is the primary factor behind being happy and successful and being in a really nurturing and satisfying relationship. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about how to grow compassion, mindfulness, self-confidence, skillfulness, determination, resilience, self-compassion, patience, generosity, on and on, emotional intelligence, the executive function, secure attachment, on and on and on and on. How to actually grow that in your mind. It's the how of self-help.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been very humbling for me is a long time, 35 years, I've been teaching workshops or doing counseling with people, teaching meditation, and all kinds of things, including being a therapist and a parent. It's been humbling for me to appreciate how many hard-won, beneficial states of mind, beneficial thoughts, beneficial feelings, beneficial body states, what have you, are nice in the moment, but they're wasted on the humility and a maturity to face that and to appreciate that, as you were talking earlier in the structures of the brain. Conscious thought, just like we're doing here, verbal thought, warp speed. I grew up in L.A., it's like a warp speed, okay? But these ancient systems that turn, that are 200 million years old, the early mammalian brain, that are these ancient systems that turn passing experiences into some kind of lasting value inside of those inner resources, inner strength. Those ancient systems are slower.
Yes.
You need to slow down. 10, 20 seconds. That's all I'm
Yes.
talking about. 1 or 2 dozen seconds. We need to slow down to be there for our own lives.
That's right.
And let the good sink in.
Now, this is a distinction that we were talking about just right here before we came on the air here, for those of you who are just joining us and you were watching us streaming live. The idea that we have so many thoughts, we're inundated with thoughts throughout the day, wondering, which ones have the greater staying power, the ones that we repeat, obviously, etc., the ones that have happened over time that are repetitive. We get that. They lay down big neural tracks and all kinds of stuff. The idea here is that we can change some of that thinking, but more importantly, the idea is, what I'm hearing you say, is bringing conscious awareness to the thoughts that actually feel good, that arise, and then we're being in relationship with that to ground those, it's my word, to embody those feelings so they start to stay and bloom, and more of that creates more happiness, right?
Yeah, think of it as 2 parts. One part is, how do you go through your day? Now, the way I think about it is that in the mosaic of reality, there are all these good facts around us. People are smiling, flowers are blooming, children are laughing, no bombs are going off, at least in our own supermarket today, ain't dead yet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You notice those good facts, and you let yourself have a good experience as a result, and do you internalize it at least a few times a day?
Right.
I call that the happiness habit. Okay, that's a general purpose thing.
Right.
Even more specifically, though, think about whatever it is you're dealing with these days. Some challenge, busy time at work, you've got a young child, got an aging parent, or maybe you're dealing with long-standing issues inside your mind, like maybe being really self-critical, maybe feeling hard on yourself about how you look or how much money you make or what have you. Okay, what's the resource that you could grow inside your mind to deal with that particular issue? For example, if you feel anxious, let's say, or irritated a fair amount by life, you would help to grow the sense of being protected in all kinds of ways. You would help to grow that feeling of relaxation inside your body, and it would help to grow a sense of determination inside yourself. So you don't have to get so frightened or angry when you're dealing with challenges. So then everyday life becomes this fantastic opportunity to look for occasions, at least a few times a day, a handful of times every day, to grow that key resource inside yourself. I mean, for me, growing up, the key resource was around feeling included and valued. So I would look for opportunities, especially in my 20s and 30s, where it was true. I really was cared about or valued or included, often in modest ways, but they were authentic. Those were genuine tiles in the mosaic of reality. And then I would try to not overlook them, but listen to the longing in my heart. Let my longings be my teacher, and realize, yes, this was healthy for me to experience, and a way to grow a key resource inside myself. So I'm extremely happy that people have the opportunity to use everyday life to grow the particular good stuff inside themselves, in addition to developing a kind of general happiness habit.
Right, and that's so well said, and I love the metaphor of the garden and the growing and all of that. At least for me, I'm very visual, and I know a lot of our listeners love that as well, the illustration. So as you move into relationship with this material, it's not so ambiguous.
Oh, yeah.
It's good to ground it.
It's like grow the flowers inside your mind, as well as pull the weeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Flowers crowd out weeds over time, and if you pull some weeds, you let go of some negative thought or some tension in your body or some crazy desire you have, if you let go of it, you better replace it with something positive. Otherwise, as any gardener knows, you pull those weeds, they come back unless you replace them with something better.
Yeah, I'd love for you to tell us a couple of stories about, your book is filled with stories, and they're very powerful examples of when people are particularly challenged or, are having trouble with. Let's take one example of something exterior that's happening in the world and how we might apply this, and then something interior that you might be working with as a real-life story for folks. What do we think about that?
Oh, sure. Like, for example, I know so many people who are dealing with some kind of tough situation. They have a long commute. They have a difficult job. They're dealing in a relationship with their challenges, teenager, going through divorce, whatever it might be. And people like this, when they start to realize that even in the middle of their difficult life, looking for little up moments where they can feel genuinely grateful or genuinely like they're actually accomplishing something, or that they can feel that they're a good person, not a perfect person, not yet a saint, but a good person, or they feel cared about, including their dog is crawling into their lap, what have you.
Right.
When you take a moment to register that positive experience, that helps you be much more able to deal with the difficulties. As much research shows on resilience in general. And then maybe a more specific example briefly, it comes from the book. This is a woman who was quite abused by her grandmother. She was kind of raised by her grandmother growing up. And it was hard for her to feel loved, right? But then, using my approach, she began working with experiences, including with her pet dog.
Wow.
Feeling really loved by her dog, she would take that in like she was a sponge, and then she would do the linking where it connected with those old painful feelings when she was 2. And she gradually became freer and freer of that angry, critical voice of her grandmother in her head.
Beautiful. It's a great example. We're going to go to break on that note. Rick Hanson's with us on Maryanne Live. Hardwiring happiness. That's what we're doing here. We're so glad that you're with us. And we're delighted that we are bringing this to you streaming live and that you're joining us today. We're going to be back right after these messages, everybody. Don't touch that dial. Back in just a minute.
All right.
Thank you, Jay. I want to be able to take 1 second, you guys, if you don't mind, and see if I can find something really fast. Is that okay, Jay, if I take like...
No problem on my end. I'm all good.
All right. You okay with that, Rick?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find this video that I sent my... Anila, the video of Chloe, my cat.
Oh.
Can you find that? Is that possible? This is... So is it on Facebook or anyway? Anila will try to find that really fast, but it's an adorable. What you were making me think of, how often I think those of us who are pet owners really appreciate those moments of real warmth, real affection, real connection, and how it actually does inform your body. Last night, for example, my cat, she's obsessed with me. This is one of my cats. And we call her Obsessa, or Special K, because we think, oh my God, what's your... But she follows me around like a dog. But it gives me such a feeling of joy, and such a... Here we go, I found the video. Such a feeling that I got to tell you guys... I want to illustrate this for you so you can get a sense of what I'm talking about, and maybe I'm going to share it with you, okay? Are we ready? Watch this. I'm going to see if you can look at this, Rick. Can you see her?
I see a computer screen. I don't see anything moving on it.
Okay, hang on a second. You
Okay,
see?
now I do. Oh, what a sweetie. We have a cat as well. Our cat has us.
Look at her looking at you.
Yeah. Hi, Sosa.
Okay, I just had to do that. Okay, so your cat, finish your thought. This is beautiful. I love
Oh,
you.
no, just, we have a cat too, a wonderful cat, aging cat. I think he's a very elderly and wise cat.
Yeah. It's amazing, those experiences, and even talking about it, and you seeing other people's animals and so forth. These things, I mean, you can see it in people's eyes and their faces, right? And to ground that in real time, let's go back, Jay, because we have one more 8-minute segment, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, take us back, and we'll talk about this as our last example. Okay, here we go. Ready?
All right, we're back. 5, 4, 3.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Rick Hanson is joining us again on Maryanne Live. He's written a book, Hardwiring Happiness. It's a wonderful book, taking us through all of the ways that the simple process really, a profound process where you can work with your mind, your brain, to hardwire yourself for happiness, and taking a look at the different areas that we are struggling with, and how to use this process to create more lasting calmness, security, happiness the feelings that you want to feel more often than not, really. During the break, I was showing a video of my cat. We were talking about how when you're interacting with your animals and so forth, and you can see, Rick, we were saying, you can see in people's faces, we can see in each other the joy that this brings. Just looking at that video of my cat or having that real life experience. Now, real time, how would we ground that experience? You've alluded to it, you've taken us through the process, but let's do it real time. So right now, I'm actually can conjure looking at my kitty and her beautiful green eyes and her little fur, and I still have a smile on my face. How do I ground that now?
Yeah, just help it last a dozen seconds. So stay with it. Feel it in your body. You're happy. Your body's all jiggly.
Yeah.
Your mood's good.
Like that.
You keep seeing her face.
Yeah.
And the trick is, you're keeping it going without getting attached to it.
Yeah.
As soon as you start trying to hold on to it ruins it, right?
Yeah.
Keep staying open with it. And trust me, neurons that fire together wire together. I guarantee you, right now, these encoding processes are proceeding in your own brain.
I feel it. I feel kind of blissed out a little bit, right?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what strikes me a lot, Maryanne, is the power of this deceptively simple practice. And when people start doing it, when they actually start letting themselves feel it for a dozen seconds, often they laugh just like that. And they often laugh at themselves because they realize, wow, I'm working so hard, including in, frankly, American culture, Western culture in general. I'm working so hard to get good experiences. I want to get this, top because I'll feel better. I want to look good because I'll feel better. And then when they actually have that experience, they're not there to receive it.
Yeah.
They don't stay with it.
Yeah.
And that leads us to be endlessly hungry for more and more and more. One of the major drivers of people's discontent and unhappiness, as well as, problems with the world altogether.
Yeah.
So for me, the important thing is to let the good moments play in.
Yeah.
Look for the experiences that are your own personal basis for growing the strength inside that will help you the most these days. I call it your own vitamin C. What's your vitamin C? What's going to make a big difference? And how can you look for opportunities to actually experience it? And my fondest hope, honestly, speaking about the world altogether, which we talked about earlier, is that if we can just get a critical mass of people, I think of it as a billion brains. I think that's about realistically right. Resting in the green zone, most minutes of most days. In other words, resting in a felt sense of a basic safety, a basic satisfaction, and a basic connection. We're still dealing with challenges, right? It's not yet a perfect world, but we're not getting our knickers in a twist. We're not going to war with stuff. And we're not feeling greedy or frightened or driven. If we can just get that going, that's a key factor, in my view, for helping the world come to a softer landing in a generation or two than the one it's heading for right now.
Yeah, I think this is a great goal to have. I think so many of us feel the longing for wanting to become this kind of a planet with this kind of experience. And I'd like to ask you a couple of questions as we head up to the top of the hour. Again, this is not about positive thinking. This is a practice, a devotional practice, working with the contents of your mind, the material, seeking experience, going out of your way to really ground these experiences. Let's talk a little bit as we come to the top of the hour about the 21-day program that you recommend at the back of the book, because I think this is a wonderful devotional way to really ground this into your life.
Great. Thank you. Well, I call it 21 Jewels. The basic idea is that, if you think about it, to go back to what you said, brainstem, subcortex, cortex, a way to put it, lizard, mouse, and monkey. All right, these are three kind of needs, safety, satisfaction, connection. Okay, that's a simplification, but it's a useful one. So I took 7 practices for each one of those, 7 times 3 is 21. That gives us 21 days. And it's the idea of just looking at one thing, focusing on one thing per day if you want, and then looking for opportunities over the course of the day to have that particular kind of experience. So I include things in there like gratitude, feeling cared about, feeling strong, noticing you're all right now, feeling like you've accomplished something, and of course the primary experiences of peace, contentment, and love. These 3 fundamental, profound experiences that are the essence, really, of resilience and self-reliance, and also the basis for giving up, the sense of deficit or disturbance inside that drives the craving, thinking of the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, that drives the craving that creates suffering in life.
Beautiful.
So anyway, anything that people want to do is good, and I want to stress that this is a straightforward practice. You can do it in your ordinary life. No one needs to know you're doing it. Most of the times you're going to take in the good. It's in the flow of life, a dozen seconds here, a few dozen seconds there. And I don't know anybody. We also ran a study on this through UC Berkeley, and we found that in a course I taught on taking the good, that people became more contented, they felt stronger inside, they became more loving, and they also became less anxious and depressed. That's pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty good results from registering every day enjoyable experience.
Yeah, exactly. Rick, it's been such a delight to have you back on the program. You always offer so much, and we all get to take away beautiful practices, and each book, by the way, that you've written sort of builds on the next book. So I highly recommend you check out Rick's other books. Go to www.rickhanson.net for more information. And when we go behind the scenes here, we're going to go off the air and be streaming live. I'm going to ask you a behind-the-scenes question about is everybody available for this kind of work? There's a lot of questioning in our culture about the kind of trauma that we experience culturally, personally. Is my brain stronger than your brain? Can I apply this? The overall answer I'm going to give you a chance to talk about here, but we're going to go behind the scenes and talk about this in a little more detail after we go off the air. What's the answer, Rick, as we end?
The short answer is everybody can turn enjoyable, beneficial experiences into neural structure. If someone is severely depressed, so depressed that if they could get out of bed, they'd kill themselves, that kind of depressed, that kind of person cannot self-generate a positive experience by definition. So these practices would not be so good for that person.
Yeah.
But everybody else, which includes 99% of the
Yeah.
population, can really do this. And, you got to do the work.
Yeah.
But it's sweet work. Half a dozen or more times a day,
Yeah.
10, 20, 30 seconds at a time. Who could not want to do that?
Absolutely.
Why waste these great experiences?
No.
You've earned them.
Yes.
It's like you've made a meal. You sat down at
That's
the
right.
banquet of life. Bring a big spoon.
That's right. And Rick, just looking at the cover of his book could be one of those moments for you. Rick, we're so happy to have had you back on the program. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, sit tight. We're going to go to break for our wrap. We'll be back in just a minute. Rick Hanson joining us. Go to rickhanson.net for more information. I'm Maryanne Comaroto. We'll be right back after these messages.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay. All right, so I'm going to ask you in more detail real quick, Rick, before I do the wrap here, and then we're going to wrap up. You mentioned that there are people, a very small percentage of people, that their brain is not available at this time, but it could be for this kind of work. What about the folks, and those are, very severely depressed people. What about people who are dealing with trauma? That's another big kind of a buzz term that's been around for the last decade. People whose attachment issues make it difficult for them to be mindful, that their arousal, hypo and hyperarousal states make it really hard for them to focus and concentrate. How do folks who fall into the category of, God, I've got some real stuff I'm working on,
Oh, yeah.
Can this program help these folks?
I think it's usually helpful, and I think the research on programs for people like that shows that internalizing positive experiences and growing resources inside, maybe people use different terms for that, it's really central to that healing process and that growth process. And even if someone, and I know these people, I've worked with people like this. I have friends like this. Even if people have had really horrible experiences, it's still possible to appreciate that it feels good to drink water when you're thirsty.
Yes.
Chocolate truffles taste great, right? you get the kids in bed finally, and you go, whoosh, that feels good. Your partner is caring, or your buddy at work jokes with you about, the whatever it is, the LA Dodgers or whatever your favorite team is, and you're just hanging out.
Yes.
That's an opportunity to let it sink in. And the question is, a lot of these people were not well given to by their family or other people, hey, your opportunity now is to give to yourself. Be that light bulb who wants to change.
Beautiful.
You know, be on your own side. Treat yourself like you matter from the inside out. And you really can do this. I mean, if you think about it, happiness is the best revenge. In other words, they mess with you then. Bad that they mess with you then. Don't keep messing with yourself today.
Absolutely.
Bad that nobody stuck up for you back then.
Yes.
Even worse that you don't stick up for yourself today.
Beautiful. Great answer. Thank you so much, Rick, for joining us.
Thank you.
Always happy to talk with you. Your work is very meaningful and important for folks. For more information, everybody, go to rickhanson.net. Get a copy of this book, and his other books are fabulous as well, don't you know? And make sure that you join us next time right here on MaryanneLive. And Jay, let's go ahead and do our wrap for those listening and not streaming.
Back in 5, 4, 3.
Thanks for joining us, you listeners out there. We're so delighted that you are part of our procession to be the 1 billion people working with these mental thoughts and creating happiness, which is what we've been doing this hour right here on MaryanneLive. Rick Hanson's new book, Hardwiring Happiness. What a great addition. Be part of the revolution. Be part of the solution. Get happy. Thanks again, Rick, for joining us. And next week, Janet Atwood's in the house, and she'll be talking about her new book, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I want you to get excited and have something to look forward to, and maybe do some research and let your fingers do the walking to MaryanneLive. We've got a lot of Janet Atwood fans, and it's got something to do with passion and a test, just so you know. Check it out online, and we'll see you next time. Same place, same time, MaryanneLive. Bringing it to you, streaming live as well. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Make it a happy one for yourself. Blessings.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.
And I'll see you on Tuesday, Jay. And Rick, we'll see you when we see you.
Yeah, great.
This
Take
is...
that, you let it in. You did a great job here, Maryanne.
I loved it.
So fun. Yeah, it's great.
I love showing those videos to people. Now I know why, because it feels good.
You know, it is really interesting. When I was getting ready to do Hardwiring Happiness, and by the way,
if I hang up, will you two be able to...
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, oops, sorry. Yeah, we're good.
See you Tuesday.
Okay.
It was great to hear from you again.
Thanks. Thanks, Jay.
Good.
Go ahead.
You're welcome.
Okay, take care.
So the short version is that early on I sent out an email to my list saying, hey, can I get some stories that take me in the good? I got 950 responses.
Oh,
It
my
was crazy. I had to pay someone to filter through all of them, and it was almost overwhelming. It was so, and many of them were profoundly moving. Stories of healing, including some things like trauma. And it is interesting that about 25 of the stories ended up in the book itself. So we kind of picked the best of the best. A really large fraction of the stories that really work in terms of taking the good involve animals.
Isn't that funny? It is.
Pets or nature, or
Yeah.
pets, you know. And I just think that's so interesting. And so I've really come to mention that more and more with people as an important source of positive experiences.
That's
like your cat.
Yes, like my cat. Well, next time you see me, I will have this veritable storehouse of videos.
Yeah.
For pleasurable experiences, I'll give you an update.
Yeah, that's good.
All right,
You take care, Maryanne.
I will.
Blessings to you and back.
Yeah, we'll see you next time, Rick. Keep up the good work. Take care.